taking everyone back to 1989. This is me in 1989. I have some really large front teeth, some really 80s hair going on. I'm really into turtlenecks for some reason. And as a kid, back in the 80s, probably like many of you as children, I spent a ton of time in the car with my parents, going to the grocery store, running random errands. And I particularly loved being in the car with my dad. Not only did his car have this really warm, rich smell of leather, but also he had something in the car that I thought was the coolest thing ever. He had this big, honkin' car phone. Now, for anyone who's too young to know what this was a car phone, not a mobile phone, and it was massive. It was sort of affixed to the center console. And at the time, it was just mind-blowing that you could use a phone in the car. So I thought this was really cool. And not infrequently, I would be in the car with my dad, and he'd get a phone call. And he'd pick it up, and would just be chatting very, very casually with the person. He'd ask about their kids, and he'd remember them by name. Or he'd know where that person had recently been on vacation and ask about that. Now, years later, I learned that, all of these calls really were not friend calls, despite what I thought, but that he was talking to clients. This totally blew my mind for a couple of reasons. One, my dad was a salesman. He sold office furniture. And I just didn't understand why a salesperson would be wasting his time having these phone calls with existing customers. After all, shouldn't he be out there trying to sell new customers? But then also, why was he talking to them in this really casual way? Shouldn't he be more professional about it? Well, my dad's philosophy was always that it's far better and more valuable to keep an existing customer than it is to try to go out and win a new one. So, why am I telling you all of this? Well, I think that this kind of real relationship building, the kind of relationship building that my dad did, is something that we see so infrequently these days. And I get it. It's hard to scale that kind of thing. You can't get on the phone and remember the kids' names of your 20,000 customers. And we try. We use things like marketing automation to try to personalize and try to scale that. But we know what that is. It's not really the same thing. And yet, we want the same thing now that my dad wanted back in 1989. We all want lifelong customers. We want people who feel that connection with our companies. So, people churn. And why do they churn? We're working so hard to keep these lifelong customers. We're working hard to build great products, to build great websites. And people still leave. Why are they leaving? Well, I would argue that it's because we're using short-term tactics. And short-term tactics lead to short-term relationships. You can change the dials a little bit on price, on various things, and hope that that's going to keep someone around, but that is short-term thinking. So what can we do if we actually want to keep those lifelong customers? I tend to believe that there are three primary ways that we can differentiate ourselves. We can differentiate on price, on product, or on experience. Let's talk about some of these. Price, I think that is the worst one to try to differentiate on. It's a race to the bottom, first of all, and you actually have no control over this. The second you drop your price, someone can come out and undercut you. Additionally, people don't actually care. I mean, you have to have a competitive price, but the vast majority of people are willing to pay more for an excellent experience. So, I don't think it's price. How about product? This is one that, I think we all imagine that we need to have the best feature set out there, the most differentiated feature set out there. But again, it's not under your control. You can build the best thing in the world, but it's only a matter of time before someone notices what you're doing and they turn around and replicate that exact same feature. And again, it's not what customers want. That's because of something called Hick's Law, which says that the amount of time it takes to make a decision or take an action increases exponentially with the number of choices. And as those number of choices go up, the experience you're having from it goes down. So people are actually oftentimes having worse experiences as we bolt on feature after feature, trying to remain in parity with our competitors. So it's not necessarily product that's our differentiator. Where does that leave us? I think it leaves us with experience. Experience is the ultimate differentiator. This is an area where nobody can come in and replicate what it feels like to work with you, to know what it feels like to call up someone on your customer service team and talk with them. No one can steal this from you. And I think it's just worth saying that, yes, you have to have a competitive price and you have to have an excellent product. Those things are table stakes, but they're not reliable as differentiators. Experience is the ultimate differentiator. So one of the things you might be thinking is, okay, great, but how do I actually do this? Well, let's take a look at where we're heading. I'm going to talk about how to leverage familiarity to build that experience, how to make sure you're not trying to be all things to all people, and how to prioritize the personal over the professional. So I want to start with a question, which is, how do you get a second grader to like you? There's a psychologist by the name of Robert Zajonc who did a really interesting study with this. What Zajonc did is he went into a couple second grade classrooms. And in one classroom, he sent a woman for about 5 minutes a day over the course of a week. The woman didn't say anything, she didn't do anything, she didn't so much as smile at the kids. The teacher didn't introduce her. She just sat there. At the end of that time, she marched out. In the second classroom, the woman never came into the room. Now, at the end of the week, Zajonc showed all of these second graders a stack of photographs of people's faces. And he asked the students to rate how much they liked the person. Among the second graders who never saw the woman, they pegged her sort of middle of the road, 4s, 5s, 6s. What's really weird is that among the second graders who saw her there in their classroom, they rated her 8s, 9s, 10s, for no good reason at all. Well, there actually is a good reason. It comes down to a human behavior, a human tendency, which is called the familiarity principle, also worked on and studied by Zajonc. And the familiarity principle says that we are all hardwired to prefer the things that we see more often. So how can we actually leverage this? How can we take advantage of this human tendency? There's a company that does this really, really well. They're called Bamboo HR, and they make HR software. This woman you see here, her name is Sarah. She does sales at Bamboo HR. And like many salespeople, she spends a ton of time on the phone calling people and trying to get people to call her back. Wasn't working that well for her, so she decided to make this video voicemail.
Hi, I'm Sarah from Bamboo HR. I'd love to do voicemail as well, but I know that sometimes email is easier. I'd love to chat with you about our free HR technology webinar. You can go ahead and email me back or give me a call at 801-889-1269.
I spoke with Sarah, and she told me that after they launched this video and she started using this, she was selling more than 2 times what she was previously. So Bamboo HR went and scaled this across their entire sales team. And this is powerful stuff. People felt familiar. They felt like they had that familiarity with Sarah. They preferred her. They felt empathy with her. Familiarity breeds love. And I want to pause for a minute just to make a side note. So I don't know, maybe some of you know this phrase. I think about this a lot. But to the person with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I am that person with a hammer, and my hammer is video. I work at Wistia. We do video hosting, video analytics, so I see video opportunities everywhere. That said, there are many great ways to build an excellent, differentiated experience that go beyond video, and I recognize that completely. I just happen to believe that video is one of the best ways of doing that. So, how can we take advantage of this familiarity principle? Very tactically, what can we do differently on our websites, with our clients, for our own companies? Well, first of all, put real people on camera. It kills me when I see people using stock photography, or worse, hiring actors to come in to be in images or worse, videos on your own website. It can feel a little intimidating at first, but that's how you build an authentic experience, is by being honest in that way. Second, to get very, very tactical for a second, if you are going to put people on camera, don't distract folks with shadows and sort of dark under-eye circles and shadows under people's chin as you get from fluorescent lighting overhead. You can make people look at their most empathetic, enthusiastic, passionate selves if you're flooding your subject's face with light. And last, do take the time to actually script a video. And I know what people think oftentimes, that, won't it sound scripted if I do that? Well, not if you're doing it right. There are ways that you can do it that doesn't make it sound scripted. But it's far better to actually script it than to have something that's unscripted and then be peppered with ums and ahs. It's pretty distracting. All right, so familiarity. I want to take us next to a book that I read last year and loved and keep thinking about. This book is called Dataclism, and it was written by Kristen, who's one of the co-founders and the chief data scientist at OkCupid. So Rudder pretty much has the most interesting job in the world because he has access to all of this cool data about how we behave, what we look for in a partner, what we like, what we dislike. In this book, Dataclism exposes a lot of what he has learned over the years. Now, there's so many great things and data points and anecdotes in this book, but there are two in particular I want to share. One of which probably will not surprise any of you, and the other one, at least for me, knocked my socks off. So the first point that Rudder shares is that more attractiveness leads to more messages. So if you are Brad Pitt or whoever is popular these days, you're going to get more messages asking you on dates and asking you to connect. Now, here's where things get really weird. Let's say you have two people. Both of them are like a 5 out of 10 on the attractiveness scale. And one of them is universally regarded to be a 5. Everybody considers that person to be a 5. The other person also has an average score of 5, but that average is made up of a lot of 1s and a lot of 10s. Maybe there's something unique about them, something a little exotic. Perhaps a large mustache or a mohawk, let's say. Where this gets really interesting with that second person, the person who is very polarizing, who gets a lot of 1s and a lot of 10s, is that polarizing person will get, on average, 70% more messages than the person who's universally regarded as a 5. 70% more. That is a really, really big change. So what's the lesson here? Perhaps it is that if turtlenecks are your thing, you do you. There are people out there who might love turtlenecks. In all seriousness, I think the bottom line here is that you should embrace those things that are unique and maybe polarizing about you. There's a company that has leveraged this well. Their name is ThoughtWorks, and they have this associate consultant program. They hire a lot of people into this program, and so they're constantly trying to recruit and hire folks. And one of the pain points that they experienced is that they had a lot of applicants and a lot of people who were interested in joining who were terrible fits for this job. So they made this video to tell people a bit more about what it was like to work at ThoughtWorks. Now, full disclosure, or I guess just to note, they don't put real people on camera, so I'm hoping that the next iteration of this has this. But I do think that they embrace this idea really well. Is cool about this video. They are telling it like it is. They say, we travel all over the country and often the world. To some people who, have a certain kind of lifestyle and love travel, that's really appealing. They're like, I want to travel all over the world. For other people who have 2 little kids at home, like myself, even though I love travel, that sounds really hard, and it just might not be a good fit. Turns out, they were able to save themselves thousands of dollars per recruit with this video because they subsequently go into even more detail about what it's like to have this job and what it feels like to be a part of this program. What I take away from this, in general, is that we shouldn't try to be all things to all people. Okay, again, let's break this down. What does this actually mean? How can we take action on this? Well, first of all, as Joanna talked about earlier today, we need to use precise language. This makes a difference. If you are traveling all over the world, say that. Don't just say people travel all the time. Second, don't hide your idiosyncrasies. It can be so tempting to think, oh, I'll just have this OkCupid photo from this angle rather than that angle to hide this thing. But don't. Oftentimes, those idiosyncrasies are the exact things that are going to make some people so passionate about the experience of working with you. All right, last, I want to take us to the Azores, which is a little chain of islands right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's part of Portugal. And the two people you're seeing here, Remy and Joao, are dear friends of mine who used to live in Boston. Now, Remy and Joao lived in Boston, had regular jobs, but their lifelong dream was to move to the Azores and open a bed and breakfast there. And at some point, they just realized life is short. If this is our dream, we should just do it. So I have so much admiration for this. They quit their jobs, they moved to the Azores, they bought property, and they opened a bed and breakfast. During their first year, they invited a lot of guests to come and essentially be beta testers of their new bed and breakfast and give them feedback. And towards the end of their first season, they reached out to all of these people who had come and stayed with them during that beta season, asking for help. They wanted these people to leave them reviews on TripAdvisor, on Yelp. They wanted those people to come back. They wanted those people to spread the word and tell their friends. And when they reached out with this request, they shared this video.
Hello!
Hey, hello!
Thank you guys so much for being some of our very first guests. Thanks to you, we learned the ropes and you got us on the map.
And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I really can't do video, so get your ass back here and come visit us. Happy 2016!
Woohoo!
Brilhozinho nos olhos e saia rodada, escancaraste a porta do bar, trazias o cabelo aos ombros, passeando de cá para lá como as ondas do mar. Conheço tão bem esses olhos e nunca me enganam. O que é que aconteceu? Diz lá, é que hoje fiz amigo.
So I love this video so much. It's not professionally done. It was shot on an iPhone. It was edited in iMovie. But there is something that they are doing exceptionally well. They are prioritizing the personal over the professional. And that makes a huge difference. There's a feeling of empathy that's created there. It's tapping back into the experience that those people had when staying with Remy and Joao. Again, let's get really specific. What does this mean? What can we actually do differently if we are prioritizing the personal over the professional? Well, first off, show personal appreciation. I don't know about you, but it kills me when I get an email from Bank of America thanking me for something that's this long, drawn-out email. That is not adding to my day, Bank of America. If anything, you are stealing 10 seconds of my time with your BS, really dry, impersonal email. If you're going to say thank you, make it count. Do it personally, just as Mike was just talking about. Second, heighten emotion with music. And music is really, really powerful. And in this case, for example, that Azorean music brings people back to the experience that they had when they were staying in the Azores. Perhaps it makes people reminisce about the Azorean food that Joao is cooking for people there in their kitchen. Last, leave room for humor. You know, Joao makes that dorky little dad joke in that video. And I love that so much, because that is who he is. And that's part of the experience that he gave people when they were staying with them. He's the kind of guy who just loves standing around cooking and cracking jokes with people and giving people that authentic experience of what he is truly like. Don't shy away from that. Leave room for that humor. Okay, I want to take us now to the holy grail of customer retention, which is evangelism. This is where you are not only keeping a customer for life, but you are actually enlisting their help to go out and spread the word about your company. They're doing your selling for you. There's an organization that leverages evangelists particularly well in an interesting way. This is called Steve and Kate's Camp, and they run a series of camps all around the country. And their whole philosophy is that they encourage kids to do their own thing, to chart their own course. Now, in the middle of the summer, they make this video and they send it out. Let's take a look.
This is the only camp I've been to where you can just be free and be yourself.
This camp is all about decision. You get to choose where you want to go, what you can do, who to be with, which is unique to this camp, and it's very fun.
Steve and Kate pretty much has everything. You make stuff, you get to sing, you get to dance. You don't have to bring your own lunch. They feed you very healthy snacks. They don't really say, okay, you have to do this. They don't tell you what to do, and they don't have to tell you mean stuff about your mistakes.
Because you're learning what you did wrong, and you're learning how you can fix it. Because there are millions of studios that you can do it in.
It's important that the kids get to be free and play all day. It's like a free roaming camp.
Get used to making your own decisions. Mostly, you're just kind of your own boss.
Don't you want to go to that camp? I totally want to go to that camp. So Steve and Kate's Camp, they are Wistia customers, and they do a lot with video. So I was poking around, and I took a look at the analytics for this video. There are two things that jumped out at me here. The first is the play count. They had over 14,000 plays on a video that was launched really recently. That's a lot of plays. Second, they have a ton of rewatches. So just to orient you for a second on this engagement graph, the blue line there shows the percentage of people that are still engaging or watching the video over the course of time, whereas the orange line that's overlaid above shows you the number of rewatches that are going on at any point in the video. And normally, those two lines are really close together. But in this case, as you can see, they're decently far apart. And they're getting about 2,000 rewatches throughout the course of this video. So I spoke on the phone with the director of marketing from Steve and Kate's Camp. And I was like, what is going on with this video? Why are so many people watching it? And who's rewatching this video again and again? And here's what he shared. He mentioned that they send this video out in the middle of the summer. Oftentimes, the kids are still at camp. Can you imagine what that feels like for the parent? You're missing your kid so much, and maybe they're away at camp for the first time ever, and you get this video that shows what your kid is doing. And maybe, just maybe, your kid is even featured in this video. Can you imagine the sense of pride that you feel? Not only are you going to go and watch that video like 1,000,000 times over, but you're going to send it to everyone you know, the grandparents and the aunt and uncles and the neighbors and everyone in your town. And then the kid gets home from camp and they see the video, and maybe they see themselves in the video. And for a kid, I mean, this is like, you're like a movie star if you're in this video on the internet. So those kids, they go and they watch it again and again, and they share it with their friends, which is so cool. How are they doing this? Well, I think it's because they are making the customer the hero. The customer in this case is the campers, or maybe in some ways even the parents, but they are making the customer the hero. They're putting the kids front and center in this story. So very tactically, how can we do this? How can we take this to heart and implement this ourselves? Well, first of all, we can use you language. I know this came up earlier, I think with Justine, that using you language is very powerful. It's putting somebody else in the center stage of your story. And what's really cool here is that not only are they using you language in order to help the customer see themselves as the hero of that story, but then once those families start sharing that video with everybody else, it allows those other viewers to imagine themselves, envision themselves as the hero of that story. Second, they're showing a wide array of perspectives. It would be so easy for them to put Steve and Kate, the actual founders, on camera and saying, like, our philosophy is blah, blah, blah. But instead, they're actually putting the kids on camera. And not just one, they're putting a lot of different kids on camera to share their perspectives. Last, they're piggybacking on emotional moments. And that emotion matters a lot. They're sending this video out when parents are already feeling, a sense of perhaps longing, missing their kids who are away, a sense of pride, perhaps, in what their kids are doing and accomplishing at that camp. And they're piggybacking on those moments, which is a great way to get people to actually take action, evangelize, spread the word about the experience that you can offer. All right, as we come to a close here, I want to take us back for a sec to my dad and his large car phone. My dad was an excellent salesperson. And it wasn't because of his car phone or any sort of newfangled technology. It wasn't even because of the chit-chat that he had going on with his clients. It was because he gave those people a real experience of what it is truly like to know him and have a personal connection with him. He's one of those people that can just find common ground and finds every single person curiosity inspiring. He gave people that experience of actually knowing him and appreciating what he did and letting them know that he appreciated what they did. So where does this leave us? Well, I think we fail ourselves and undermine ourselves if we're trying to use short-term tactics. Those are only going to lead us to short-term relationships. Instead, if we're able to recognize and leverage experience as our ultimate differentiator, we will be able to keep these lifelong customers. My hope for all of you is that you will seek out ways, large and small, to impact the experience that you're giving to people. Seek out ways that your clients can show that experience and give people the most authentic, personal experience possible. I love this stuff a ton, so if any of you have great examples of things that you've seen or you've done yourselves, please let's come and talk. I'm going to be down by the Wistia booth later today and then around later tonight. So I would love to chat and hear all of your stories. Thank you very much.